Good morning, everyone. My name is Hannah Bristol. I'm in the White House Office of Public Engagement, and thank you all so much for joining us for today's call. As a reminder, today's call is closed press and off record. We're going to hear from Secretary Cardona in a second, and then we will also hear from Barack Murthy from the National Economic Council, and then we are going to have a Q&A afterwards. So thank you to everyone who sent in their questions ahead of time. We're here today to talk about actions that the Biden-Harris administration is taking to protect student borrowers following the Supreme Court case last week. And I'm going to pass it to Secretary Cardona to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you, Hannah. Hello, I'm Miguel Cardona, U.S. Secretary of Education. I want to thank you for joining today's important call. I know all of you have been fighting for our nation's college students and student loan borrowers, or you may yourself may be a borrower. And the Supreme Court's decision on debt relief is really disappointing. To be very frank, I believe they got it wrong. Between that decision, the affirmative action decision, and some of the other decisions they're making, we believe they got it wrong. But I am here to tell you that the work you've done and will continue to do is making a difference. I want to reassure you that the Biden-Harris team is not done fighting for student loan borrowers or for working families. Our fight's not over, and we are honored to be in this work alongside you. I want to thank you for the work you're doing as well. We have a path forward. I know you have questions, and we're going to get to some of these questions. That's why we're here today. I'm going to explain what the court's decision means for borrowers, and then we'll hear from my White House colleague, Barack Murthy, right after I speak. And he, James Quall, Undersecretary of Education, and I will be happy to take some questions. But first, some context. More than 40 million borrowers qualified for debt relief program. Republican elected officials proved that they stop at nothing to block millions of their own constituents from getting $10,000 of relief or $20,000 if they're Pell eligible. Some of these same folks that are blocking this are people that have gotten over $1 million in pandemic debt relief themselves in the last 2 years. It makes no sense. It's hypocrisy at its finest, and we're going to continue to fight. All of us on this call are committed to helping borrowers as they get back on their feet and recover from the pandemic. And here's how the Biden-Harris team is moving forward with this. We're looking at an alternative path to provide debt relief by issuing new rules under the Higher Education Act. Okay, so there's a rulemaking process, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, that we're going to initiate now to give me the ability to provide an alternative pathway to debt relief. This path is going to take time, but we're committed to doing everything we can to provide as much relief to as many borrowers as possible and as quickly as possible. And we want to hear from you. We're going to develop this path in partnership with you via the public comment period, and we're going to emphasize transparency in the process. That's step number one, okay? Step number two, the Department of Education finalized our new income-driven repayment plan, which will be the most affordable repayment plan in our country's history. It'll cut monthly payments to $0 for many and save others at least $1,000 per year on payments. It's also going to stop runaway interest that leaves borrowers owing more than their initial loan. And to protect the most vulnerable borrowers, the department is providing an on-ramp period that'll help borrowers return to repayment without falling into delinquency or default. We want to be as helpful as possible to those who are restarting their payments after 3 years and provide a smooth on-ramp. Borrowers who can make their payments should do so, but we want to make sure that those that are struggling have support. We've also expanded and retooled programs like public service loan forgiveness to ensure that more borrowers qualify and get the forgiveness they've earned. People like our teachers, our nurses, firefighters, members of law enforcement, and other public servants. That program served only 7,000 borrowers from 2017 to 2021 under the last administration. In the last 2 years, we've gotten that number over 600,000 people. We're really proud of that work, providing over $42 billion in debt forgiveness to public servants. We're fixing a broken system. The entire Biden-Harris team remains fully committed to ensuring that Americans can build fulfilling careers without the burden of student loan debt, blocking them from opportunity. And we need your help to get the word out. Again, our fight is not done. encourage those who care about the issue to go to studentaid.gov to learn more. Now I'm pleased to turn it over to someone that's been fighting the fight with us, a colleague at the White House, Bharat. Bharat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you all for joining today. I just want to add a couple more details to what the Secretary laid out. In light of the Supreme Court's opinion, we've taken 3 steps to try to deliver on the relief that the President and the Secretary announced last year. Number 1, as the Secretary noted, we're trying an alternative pathway under an alternative legal authority called the Higher Education Act. That rulemaking process will take some amount of time, but our goal with that new rulemaking process is to try to provide debt relief to as many borrowers as possible, as quickly as possible. In fact, just a few hours after the Supreme Court issued its ruling, the Secretary initiated that new rulemaking process, and the first step, which is a public hearing, will take place later this month. So we'll keep you posted as that progresses. But that remains our alternative pathway to trying to provide debt relief to borrowers. Second, obviously, with loan repayments beginning again in the fall, the administration is focused on trying to make sure that the most vulnerable borrowers who are in a situation where they may not be able to make some of their monthly payments avoid the very worst consequences of that. So we have announced what we're calling a 12-month on-ramp period. That means during that 12-month period, starting this fall and going into next year, your payments will be due, your interest will be accruing, so it'll be different than the pause. But if you happen to miss a payment or two, rather than being held in delinquency or put into default and being reported to a credit reporting agency, the department will make sure that borrowers in this 12-month period are not subject to those kinds of harsher consequences from missed payments. As the Secretary said, if you can make your payments during this period, you should, because interest will be accruing and so on, and you won't get credit for programs like income-based repayment and public service loan forgiveness. But if your situation is dire and you have to miss a payment, we're making sure that you avoid the very worst consequences of that. And third, we are rolling out a new income-based repayment plan. Everyone is eligible to sign up for that plan if you contact your loan servicer. As the Secretary said, it is an extraordinarily generous program for lower income, middle income borrowers. Folks who may have been making significant monthly payments before under this new plan will be paying substantially less. In some cases, will be required to pay $0 a month. And still be earning credits towards ultimately getting their loans forgiven under the income-based repayment plan. And so we encourage you to contact your servicer, sign up for this new plan, and you'll start to see those benefits as we get into the fall. So those are the steps that we're taking in light of the Supreme Court's decision. As the Secretary said, we believe that the initial action that we announced last August was legally available, was proper. We're disappointed in the Supreme Court's opinion, but we're not giving up on fighting for student loan borrowers, and that's why we're taking the 3 steps that we've laid out today. Hannah, back to you.
Thank you so much, Bharat. Thank you, Secretary Cardona. I also would like to introduce you all to Undersecretary James Call, who's the Undersecretary of Higher Education, is going to be joining us for the Q&A. So thank you so much to everybody who submitted questions ahead of time through the registration form. We have a couple questions that we are going to ask, and if we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up continuously with some resources as we have more information for everybody who registered for this call. So the first question I have for you all is, alongside these actions to aid current borrowers, what are some of the steps that the administration is taking to address rising tuition costs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to kick it off and then turn it over to my colleague, James Quall. Look, when the president announced in August the targeted debt forgiveness plan, he told me that same day in the White House, what are we going to do about these runaway college costs? How can we keep the cost down? So I think it's really important that folks see what we're doing on debt relief as part of a bigger plan to make college more accessible, more affordable. So we are doing several things where I'll let James talk about gainful employment, what we're planning with that. We're putting out lists of colleges that are low value. We're going after those who are preying on students, telling them that they're going to give them a degree in something that's going to give them a job, and then they're in debt over $100,000 and working with a very low salary, unable to pay off those debt. So we're taking it to them as well, making sure that we're going after those who are taking advantage of students, and making sure we're lifting up inclusivity and high value programs instead of programs where you're left in debt for the rest of your life. James, why don't you talk specifically maybe about some of the things that we were discussing under the GLOBE plans that we have?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's important to us that we put in place permanent solutions here, and the steps the president discussed on student debt around the SAVE plan and the public service loan forgiveness are permanent improvements. And as he mentioned, we're also taking a look at where all this unaffordable debt comes from. And a very large share of it, about half of it, comes from for-profit colleges, despite them enrolling a relatively small share of students. And so we have proposed the toughest standards ever to ensure that students who attend career programs are not left with debts that they can't afford to repay. And that's, part of an overall effort to make sure that we're looking out for the interests of students and taxpayers, including stronger enforcement efforts. This month is the effective date of the new borrower defense rule that protects students against college wrongdoing and illegal conduct. And we're working across the board to make sure that students have good information about what their debts are likely to be, what their earnings are likely to be, and whether those loans are going to be affordable.
Thank you so much. The next question I have is the public service loan forgiveness program still protected, and what are some updates with that program?
We've worked very hard to improve the public service loan forgiveness program. This was a promise that Congress made to public servants that people plan their careers around. And as the Secretary said, when he took office, only 7,000 people had ever received benefits from that program. So we worked very hard to clear out a lot of the red tape and the tricks and traps. There were little known eligibility requirements, and a lot of people found later on they had the wrong type of loan, or they had been in the wrong repayment plan all along. So by addressing some of those problems, we have now approved more than 400,000 public service loan forgiveness discharges. And we're going to keep working very hard to make sure that student debt doesn't stand in the way of people's career choices, especially if they want to give back by being a teacher or nurse or a service member.
Yeah, if I can add to that, we know people go into public service because they want to make their community better. And the president is committed to making sure that the program that was bipartisan passed program is there for those who are choosing public service. As James said, we have hundreds of thousands. And this is an area where I think the folks on this call can really help. It's out there. Last week, I spoke to an educator that that had over $150,000 in debt relieved because of public service loan forgiveness. So this is out there. We can use your help getting the word out, letting them know that we simplified the process, and we want public servants to apply for it so that they too can benefit from public service loan forgiveness.
Thank you so much. We also got a lot of questions about the income-driven repayment program. So what are the next steps with that program, and what is entailed as part of the revisions that have been made to the program, and how soon can people expect to hear more information and see those changes?
So we have released, the Secretary released the final terms of that repayment plan last Friday. And we will be implementing the first benefits of that plan prior to the return to repayment. So students who are enrolled in the repay plan will be automatically transitioned to the new SAVE plan. You can sign up for that today. We'll be launching a dedicated SAVE application in the coming weeks. And we will be implementing some early provisions of that plan this summer to reduce borrower payments. and implementing the full plan a year from now. So as the secretary said, this is the most affordable repayment plan ever, and we're really proud of what it will do to make loans more affordable, especially for low income and middle income households.
Thank you so much. So what are the next steps for student borrowers across the board as they're thinking about returning to repayment? Are there steps that folks should take?
Yeah, we're going to be communicating very directly with borrowers starting this week about what they can expect for the return to repayment. Interest will resume on September 1, and borrowers will start seeing their bills in September and October, with payments due in October. So we think it's important that people start now to get ready and take advantage of the things that we have to ensure that student loans are more affordable. And that includes considering applying for public service loan forgiveness or other loan forgiveness programs. Consider the new SAVE repayment plan or other affordable options that we offer for students. And it also means making sure that we have your contact information. We can keep in touch with you. Consider enrolling in auto debit. So these steps and other things are all laid out on our webpage, studentaid.gov. And all that you all can do as our partners to make sure that that we're reaching borrowers and we're helping them take advantage of the benefits that are available on federal loans would be greatly appreciated.
And if borrower is struggling financially to figure out what their next steps are there steps that they should take for the on-ramp or anything else that's available for those borrowers?
The on-ramp is something that, go ahead, Bharat.
There's no steps that anybody has to take advantage of the on-ramp. That those protections will apply automatically. I want to reiterate what the secretary and what I said at the top, which is that if folks can make their payments, they should, because unlike during the pause period, your interest will be accruing. So if you're not making your payments, that interest will keep ticking up. But this 12-month on-ramp period does not require a sign up. It's just an automatic protection. One way to think about it is that it's almost as if the department will automatically put you into forbearance if you miss a few payments, and protect you from some of the worst consequences of missing those payments. But we wanted to make sure that we had this protection in place, given that folks haven't been making their payments for 3 years, and we know that this transition period is going to be challenging for some. And so we wanted to make sure that we had this available, but it doesn't require any kind of sign up.
We're already hearing some noise from our Republican colleagues that we shouldn't be doing this. We're going to do it. It's the right thing to do. This is not an extension of the loan pause. As you know, with the debt ceiling discussions, that was put to rest. Congress said we can no longer extend it. So what we're doing is making sure we're providing an on-ramp for smooth repayment. We are doing it. It's not a pause extension. Payments are due. Interest will accrue. But as Bharat said, we're going to do it in a way that prevents folks from having delinquencies or defaults in their first year.
Thank you both. And speaking of the pause, what happens to the months that occurred during the pause? Does that operate towards a credit towards any of these programs, or what are we doing with that period of time?
Yeah, so the months in which people were benefiting from the payment pause do count as progress toward public service loan forgiveness or toward forgiveness under income-driven repayment. And that will be true through the month of August.
Great, thank you. And then we also got a couple questions about the Parent Plus borrower program. Is there anything that that's available to folks in that program, or things that you would say to folks who are asking about the Parent Plus program?
Yeah, we recognize that's an important tool that a lot of families use to finance education, and there are people struggling with their Parent Plus loans. Parent loans were eligible for the debt forgiveness program that was struck down last week. So we're going to regroup and take a look in this new rulemaking process about what other steps might be appropriate for parents, or what else we can do.
Bro, I don't know if you want to speak more to this. I think it's important that those who are on the call here, directly from us, that we disagree with the Supreme Court decision. And while we disagree with it, we recognize that we have to move forward in a different way. We are analyzing the 200 pages of the decision to determine what the best pathway forward is and how to move forward. So it's really important that folks realize, we're not going from 43 here to 43 here. We're beginning a new process that's going to change the rules to get us to as much debt relief to as many people as quickly as possible. But the interpretation of the Supreme Court decision will factor in how the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, and the White House attorneys and lawyers work together to move us forward to debt forgiveness. I think it's really important for you all to hear that. The Supreme Court decision struck down the HEROES Act. We're doing it under HEA, and we're taking into account what they said on Friday to make sure we put the best path forward moving forward.
Yeah, I would just add on the Parent Plus point. Obviously, Parent Plus loans were included in the original debt relief plan. We know that those borrowers are often in need of relief as well, and it was important to us that they get that relief. As the Secretary pointed out, we are just now embarking on a new process, and while I know it is can be frustrating that we can't provide more information now about who exactly will get relief under this new process, unfortunately, that's the way it works. You have to you can't prejudge the outcome. You have to do a proposal and receive comments and work with stakeholders to develop and fine-tune that before coming to a final conclusion. But as the President made clear last week, as the Secretary has made clear, the goal of this new process is to provide relief to as many borrowers as possible, as quickly as possible. And we'll continue to provide you all and the rest of the public with updates as we can provide more details.
Thank you all. We have time for one more question, and I think you all touched on this a little bit already, but what can folks do to help get the word out? And what takeaways would you want folks to share coming out of this call to other folks who they're communicating with for borrowers?
Bharat or James, want to start with that? I'll jump in after.
Yeah, I would say this. It was very, very important to them, and I know to the Secretary, that that we keep fighting for student loan borrowers. And we think that that borrowers are in need of relief, that they deserve relief. We had developed an approach that we thought was targeted and fair to provide relief to a broad set of borrowers, with particular relief for those who had received Pell Grants in the past. And we believed that we had developed an approach that was legal under the very broad authority that Congress had given to the Secretary. We're disappointed that the Supreme Court reached a different conclusion. We broadly agree with the dissent that was issued in that case, which I think laid out in quite a bit of detail exactly why the Secretary does have this authority quite clearly. But we're not going to take this lying down. We wanted to move very quickly to pursue an alternative pathway to provide this relief to borrowers, and that's what we announced, literally on the day that we got the negative decision from the Supreme Court. So we're not done on this issue, and as we wait for this rulemaking process to conclude, I really want to urge people to take a look at this new income-based repayment program. It's not intended to be a substitute for debt relief, but it can really provide a lot of benefit to a lot of borrowers in the form of substantially lower monthly payments, as we wait for the debt relief process to unfold over the next several months.
James, are you going to say anything?
Go ahead, Mr. Secretary. Thanks.
Well, look, the Supreme Court got it wrong. I think they're changing the rules as we go along. I don't believe Mohila wanted to be anywhere near this case. It was an ideological belief looking for a plaintiff. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting. The president's committed to that. And I want to remind folks on this call and thank you, because you've been with us along the process. This administration, this president and vice president, has done more for education than any other administration. I'm talking as an educator. I've been in the education field for over 25 years. In the last 2.5 years, colleges did not close because of HERF, because of ARP. Students were kept home because of the HERF dollars and the American Rescue Plan dollars that went toward preserving the institution of public education. It's that same passion that the president has to continue to provide debt relief, to fix a broken system so that interest, ability, and intellectual capacity are determining factors of college accessibility, not wealth, not place. We're committed now more than ever to find a pathway to debt forgiveness, to fix a broken system, to make sure college is more affordable, that we're holding higher education institutions accountable, and that we're communicating every step of the way. That's the passion that we have. The president is more committed than ever. And we want you to be in the loop. We want to communicate with you so that you can see what we're doing. But make no mistake, there's one team that's fighting for students and borrowers, and there's one team that's fighting to stop our support of students and borrowers. So I think that's a message that I want you to leave with today, that despite the ruling on Friday, we're committed to making sure we make education more accessible for more people across the country. And thank you for being on the call, and thank you for the support and the communication that you're going to do, not only up to this point, but moving forward. We look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Undersecretary. Thank you, Bharat. And thank you to all of you for being on this call and for everything that you're going to continue to do to help other people understand what is going on, to share this message. Just to reiterate a couple top lines that you heard here, you can get more information at studentaid.gov. The Department of Education is also going to continue to be communicating next steps here. And by signing up for this, you'll continue to get updates from the White House as well, as we have more information to share. So thank you so much for joining, and we will continue to be in touch.
Thank you, Hannah and Lisa.